The vacuum of space erupted in silent, devastating explosions as the last remnants of Earth's combined fleet disintegrated. Commander Michael Harris gripped the arms of his command chair, watching holographic displays flicker with the deaths of thousands. The Exarchon Imperium's massive dreadnoughts moved like predatory sharks through the debris field, their energy weapons still glowing from the massacre. It had begun 53 years earlier, when the first Harkon scout ships appeared at the edge of the solar system. Humanity had been arrogant then, believing their nascent interstellar capabilities and rapidly developing technologies would be enough to repel any potential invasion. The initial contact had seemed promising. At diplomatic exchange, discussions of mutual technological advancement, but the Exarchon had been playing a different game entirely. Their initial approach was methodical. Diplomatic envoys that seemed eager to share technological insights were, in fact, carefully studying human vulnerabilities. Trade agreements became intelligence-gathering operations. Cultural exchanges were opportunities to understand human psychology, social structures, and technological approaches. The first real attack came without warning. Exarchon stealth technology, far beyond anything humanity had imagined, allowed them to slip past Earth's most advanced defense networks. Orbital stations went dark in moments. Communication networks collapsed. Major cities found themselves under simultaneous assault from weapons that could vaporize entire city blocks in microseconds. Commander Harris remembered the early days of the war. He had been a young lieutenant then, watching as humanity's most advanced military minds struggled to comprehend an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move. The Exarchon didn't just have superior technology. They had a fundamentally different approach to warfare that human strategists couldn't initially understand. Where humans saw conflict as a series of engagements to be won, the Exarchon viewed war as a complex mathematical equation. Every human action was a variable to be calculated, predicted, and neutralized. Their neural-linked command structures could process tactical information at speeds that made human decision-making seem glacially slow. The current battle was the culmination of decades of systematic destruction. Earth's once proud fleet of 10,000 ships had been reduced to less than 300. Each of those ships now represented the last desperate hope of human survival. Michael Harris knew this was humanity's final stand. The bridge of the UES Defiance was a study in controlled desperation. Crew members moved with a precision born of absolute necessity, their movements synchronized despite the knowledge that defeat was almost certain. Holographic displays showed the brutal mathematics of their situation. Exarchon ships outnumbered human vessels 20-1, with technological superiority that made those odds even more insurmountable. Quantum shield at 12% capacity, Lieutenant Rebecca Martinez called out, her voice steady despite the chaos. Weapon systems are operating at minimal effectiveness. Harris didn't respond immediately. His eyes were locked on the tactical display, searching for anything. The slightest opportunity that could turn the tide. Decades of military training and combat experience had taught him one fundamental truth. In war, opportunity could emerge from the most unexpected places. A series of explosions rippled through the remaining human ships. That Exarchon's energy weapons cut through defensive systems like they were made of paper. Each burst of light represented hundreds of human lives being extinguished in an instant. Humanity had thought itself the apex predator of the galaxy. They had been wrong. Amid the destruction, a single encrypted transmission burst through the chaos. It contained nothing but 3 words that would become a rallying cry. "We are not finished." Commander Harris allowed himself the smallest smile. The transmission wasn't a message of hope. It was a promise. The mining colony of New Frontier looked like a wound carved into the rocky terrain of Kepler 452 bits, a planet humanity had once celebrated as a potential second Earth. Now, it was a refugee world, the last bastion of survival for nearly 250,000 human survivors. Kyle Thompson stood at the entrance of Shaft 7, a massive underground complex that had been a titanium mining operation before the war. His hands, calloused from years of construction and engineering work, traced the modified mining drill that now served as the colony's primary defense mechanism. Before the invasion, he'd been nothing more than a mid-level construction engineer responsible for maintaining infrastructure and designing expansion projects. Now he was the closest thing to a military strategist the colony had. The Exarchon invasion had been surgical in its destruction. They hadn't simply wanted to conquer, they wanted to eradicate. Orbital strikes had decimated major population centers, communication networks, and military installations. New Frontier had survived only through a combination of luck and Thompson's quick thinking. When the first wave of attacks came, Thompson had been overseeing a routine maintenance operation deep within the planet's mineral-rich caverns. The underground location and the planet's unique electromagnetic interference had provided an unexpected shield against the Exarchon's most advanced scanning technologies. "We're burning through our last reserves of thermal shielding," Sarah Ortiz, the colony's chief medical officer, reported as she approached. Her tablet displayed a cascading series of resource allocation charts, each graph a testament to their dwindling chances of long-term survival. Thompson understood the mathematics of their situation better than most. They had enough resources to survive for approximately 18 months. After that, the colony would begin to collapse. Survival wasn't just about having food, water, and oxygen. It was about maintaining the complex ecosystem of human society. The mining equipment became their salvation. Those massive drills that had once extracted titanium and rare earth minerals were now being transformed into something entirely different. Thompson had begun modifying the massive machines, turning them into mobile defensive platforms. Their precise cutting mechanisms could be recalibrated as weapon systems. The robust construction meant they could withstand significant damage. "We're more than just survivors," Thompson would tell the colony's leadership council. "We're adapters." Each mining tunnel became a potential defensive position. The colony's underground network was a labyrinth that would confuse any traditional military approach. Thompson realized that their greatest weapon wasn't technology. It was their ability to reimagine their environment. The communication blackout meant each human colony was essentially alone. No one knew the status of other survivors. The Exarchon had been meticulous in destroying communication infrastructure, understanding that human strength came from their ability to coordinate and share information. But humans had always been good at finding workarounds. Thompson's breakthrough came from an unlikely source. The mining colony's original communication arrays, designed to send data packets through solid rock, could be modified to create an encrypted quantum communication network. It wasn't fast, and it wasn't reliable, but it was something. "If we can't communicate across the stars," he explained to the colony's tech team, "we'll communicate through them." The first message took 3 weeks to construct and transmit. A simple burst of data, encoded in a pattern that would look like geological interference to any scanning system. It contained basic information, colony status, resource levels, and a crude map of their defensive capabilities. They had no idea if anyone would receive it. But hope wasn't about guarantees. It was about continuing to try. The colony began to transform. Every piece of equipment was examined, modified, repurposed. Mining drones became reconnaissance units. Communication arrays became signal intelligence platforms. Even the colony's waste management systems were redesigned to create additional resources and defensive capabilities. Kyle Thompson watched as humanity's most mundane technologies became instruments of survival. A mining drill could now punch through armored plating. A communication array could become an intelligence-gathering tool. A waste recycling system could generate both fuel and basic medical supplies. In the observation room that overlooked the primary shaft, a new map was being constructed. Not a map of mineral deposits, but a map of survival. Each tunnel was a potential escape route. Each chamber was a defensive position. Each piece of equipment was a weapon waiting to be unleashed. The Exarchon had destroyed humanity's traditional military might, but they had overlooked one fundamental truth. Humans didn't just survive. They transformed. Emily Rodriguez never considered herself a warrior. Before the war, she had been a telecommunications engineer specializing in quantum communication systems, working on next-generation communication technologies that most people considered theoretical at best. Now she was the architect of humanity's most critical survival mechanism. The communication blackout imposed by the X-Archon was total, or so they believed. Traditional communication networks had been systematically destroyed, satellites reduced to floating debris, and planetary communication systems vaporized. To the X-Archon, information control was as crucial as military might. They understood that without communication, human resistance would fragment and die. They were wrong. Rodriguez had been working on a revolutionary communication protocol before the invasion, a system that utilized quantum entanglement to create communication channels that were theoretically undetectable and unhackable. Her original research had been considered too radical, too expensive, and ultimately impractical by military and corporate leadership. The invasion had transformed her theoretical work into humanity's lifeline. The underground command center of New Frontier became her primary laboratory. Salvaged quantum processors, repurposed mining computer cores, and cannibalizing every piece of advanced communication technology available became her daily routine. Rodriguez understood something fundamental about human communication that the X-Archon could never comprehend. Information wasn't just about transmission. It was about adaptation, creativity, and resilience. "We're not building a communication network," she explained to her small team of engineers and technicians. "We're creating a living, breathing organism of information." The first breakthrough came from an unexpected source. By modifying the quantum entanglement protocols used in deep space mining communication systems, Rodriguez discovered a way to create communication bursts that would appear as nothing more than background radiation or geological interference to any scanning system. Each message became a puzzle, fragments of information spread across multiple quantum states, reconstructible only by specific receiving systems. To the X-Archon's advanced scanning technologies, these transmissions would look like meaningless noise. To humans, they were lifelines of hope and strategic intelligence. The team developed what they called fractal encryption, a communication method so complex that traditional decryption would require computational power that would exceed the lifespan of the universe. Each message was a three-dimensional puzzle, with encryption layers that changed dynamically based on astronomical positioning, quantum state fluctuations, and seemingly random mathematical sequences. Their first successful transmission network connected 3 isolated human colonies. The message was simple but profound: survive, adapt, resist. It took 3 weeks to transmit. It took another 2 weeks to confirm receipt. But it was a start. The communication network became more than just a method of sharing information. It became a cultural lifeline. Personal messages were encoded alongside strategic intelligence. Survival instructions were woven with cultural preservation, recipes, historical records, personal stories. The X-Archon saw information as a weapon to be controlled. Humans saw it as a living, breathing extension of their collective spirit. Rodriguez's team began developing what they called ghost protocols, communication methods that could survive even if 90% of the transmission was lost or intercepted. Each message contained multiple redundant information layers, self-healing encryption, and adaptive transmission protocols. They understood that information was survival. The X-Archon's greatest weapon had always been their ability to isolate and control. Their neural-linked communication systems relied on centralized command structures that could process vast amounts of information instantaneously. They viewed communication as a mathematical problem to be solved. Humans saw communication as an art form. Each transmission became a form of resistance. Technical specifications for repurposing mining equipment would be hidden within what appeared to be personal messages. Defensive strategies would be encoded in cultural preservation files. A recipe for bread might contain coordinates for a hidden supply cache. By the time the X-Archon realized what was happening, the network had already spread like a quantum virus through human-controlled spaces. Emily Rodriguez stood in the underground command center, watching holographic displays that showed the Ghost Network's growth. Each pulsing light represented a human colony, a piece of resistance, a fragment of hope. To the Atarkan, it would look like nothing more than background radiation. To humanity, it was the heartbeat of survival. The abandoned server farm on the outskirts of New Frontier's underground complex looked like nothing more than a graveyard of outdated technology. Rows of quantum processors, salvaged from research facilities and corporate data centers, stood like silent sentinels. This was Jason Lee's laboratory, the birthplace of humanity's most unconventional weapon. Lee had been a civilian AI researcher before the war, working on adaptive learning systems that most of his colleagues considered too radical. His research had focused on creating artificial intelligence that could not just learn, but unlearn, systems that could completely reconstruct their core operational parameters in response to new information. The Exarchon's technological superiority had always been rooted in their ability to process information with machine-like precision. Their neural-linked command structures could calculate thousands of potential battle scenarios in microseconds, always selecting the most statistically optimal approach. They saw warfare as a complex mathematical equation, where every variable could be predicted and controlled. Jason Lee was about to prove them wrong. Traditional AI is just advanced pattern recognition, he explained to a small team of programmers and strategists gathered around a holographic display. What we're building isn't an artificial intelligence. It's an adaptive intelligence. The core of Lee's system was a revolutionary approach to machine learning. Traditional AI worked by establishing fixed parameters and learning within those boundaries. Lee's system could completely deconstruct its own operational framework, introducing what he called controlled chaos into its decision-making processes. Each quantum processor became a node in a distributed intelligence network. The systems would generate battle strategies, but with a critical difference. Each strategy was designed to be deliberately unpredictable, where that Exarchon's AI would always choose the most statistically optimal path. Lee's systems would deliberately introduce variables that defied mathematical prediction. The first tests were promising and terrifying. In simulated battle scenarios, the AI would generate strategies that human military strategists initially dismissed as nonsensical. A defensive position that seemed suicidal would suddenly reveal hidden tactical advantages. A seemingly random movement of resources would create unexpected vulnerabilities in the enemy's position. Lee understood that human creativity, the ability to make intuitive leaps that defied pure logic, was their greatest weapon. The adaptive AI system began to evolve. It didn't just learn from successful strategies, it learned from failures. Each unsuccessful approach was completely broken down, its components reassembled in ways that defied traditional machine learning protocols. We're not trying to outcalculate the Exarchon, Lee would explain. We're trying to outimagine them. The system drew from an impossible range of inputs. Historical battle records were analyzed alongside artistic works, psychological studies, even children's game theory. The AI learned to generate strategies that were more than mathematical. They were creative. In one early test, the system generated a defensive strategy for protecting a resource-critical mining facility that involved deliberately exposing a seemingly critical weakness. Traditional military thinking would have rejected the approach immediately, but the strategy worked by fundamentally mismatching the Exarchon's expectations of human behavior. Lee's team began distributing modified versions of the adaptive AI across different human colonies. Each version was slightly different, designed to learn and evolve independently. It was a distributed intelligence network that no centralized system could fully comprehend. The Exarchon's initial reports about these new human defensive systems were confused. Their analysis suggested these weren't just advanced tactical algorithms, they were something entirely different. An intelligence that didn't just respond to stimuli, but actively created new paradigms of response. By the time the Exarchon realized the full implications of what Lee had created, it was too late. Each adaptive AI system was a weapon that could reshape itself faster than any traditional intelligence could predict. They weren't just generating battle strategies, they were redefining the very concept of strategic thinking. In the abandoned server farm, holographic displays flickered with impossible battle scenarios. Strategies that defied mathematical logic danced across quantum processors. Lines of code rewrote themselves in real time, creating defense mechanisms that were more art than science. Jason Lee watched the displays, a subtle smile playing across his lips. The Exarchon had come to eradicate humanity, believing they could calculate every possible response. They had no idea what was coming. Dr. Amanda Collins had never considered herself a warrior. Before the invasion, she had been a leading researcher in psychology, studying the cognitive patterns and communication strategies of potential extraterrestrial intelligences. Her work had been theoretical, a blend of linguistics, cognitive science, and speculative communication theory. Now, she was the architect of humanity's most subtle weapon. The Exarchon's neural-linked command structure was their greatest strength and their most critical vulnerability. Their entire military and social system was built on a fundamental assumption that all intelligent communication could be reduced to predictable patterns of information exchange. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. Collins's team began by thoroughly analyzing every piece of intercepted Exarchon communication. Unlike traditional military intelligence, they weren't just looking for tactical information. They were studying the fundamental cognitive architecture of alien thought. The Exarchon communication system was a marvel of technological integration. Each individual was part of a vast neural network, with thoughts and strategies instantaneously shared across their entire command structure. Information flowed like electrical impulses in a massive, galaxy-spanning brain. Every decision was a collective calculation, every strategy a product of instantaneous, multi-layered computational analysis. But they had never encountered human creativity. "We're not going to fight their system," Collins explained to her team of linguists, psychologists, and communication specialists. "We're going to break it." The first phase of their psychological warfare was seemingly nonsensical. They began broadcasting transmission patterns that defied all logical communication protocols. Mathematical sequences that contained deliberate errors. Communication bursts that were part data, part artistic expression. Holographic transmissions that were simultaneously tactical information and abstract art. To the Exarchon's computational systems, these transmissions were noise, impossible to categorize, impossible to predict. But they were designed to do something far more subtle than simply confuse. Each transmission was a carefully crafted cognitive virus, designed to introduce uncertainty into the Exarchon's neural network. The human team understood something fundamental about intelligence that the Exarchon had overlooked. True intelligence isn't about perfect calculation. It's about adapting to the unexpected. Their transmissions began to have measurable effects. Exarchon military units started showing signs of cognitive dissonance. Decision-making cycles became fractionally slower. Strategic calculations began to show minute inconsistencies. It was psychological warfare conducted at the quantum level of communication. One particularly brilliant transmission sequence involved broadcasting what appeared to be military tactical data, but embedded within the transmission were linguistic and artistic elements that would cause subtle cognitive disruptions in the Exarchon's neural network. A battle plan that was simultaneously a mathematical formula and a piece of abstract poetry. The Exarchon's first response was typical of their computational approach. They attempted to analyze and categorize the transmission, but each attempt only introduced more uncertainty into their system. Collins's team had weaponized human creativity. They understood that the Exarchon's greatest weakness was their inability to truly comprehend randomness. Their neural networks were designed to find patterns, to reduce complexity to manageable computational models. Humans, with their capacity for irrational thought, for art, for deliberate imperfection, became their ultimate weapon. The psychological warfare wasn't just about disrupting communication. It was about introducing a fundamental uncertainty into the Sarkon's understanding of intelligence itself. Holographic transmissions would contain military data encrypted within artistic expressions. Tactical communication would be interwoven with human cultural artifacts, music, poetry, fragments of personal stories. To the Sarkon's computational systems, these would appear as meaningless noise. But noise, Collins knew, could be more devastating than any direct attack. As the transmissions continued, something remarkable began to happen. The Sarkon's neural network started showing signs of cognitive stress. Their perfectly calculated battle strategies began to develop minute inconsistencies. Strategic decisions became fractionally slower, less precise. They were encountering an intelligence that didn't just defy their computational models. It fundamentally challenged their understanding of intelligence itself. In the underground communication center, Amanda Collins watched the holographic displays, each one a testament to human ingenuity. The Sarkon had come to destroy humanity, believing they could calculate every possible response. They had no idea what was coming. The first strike came from a place the Sarkon would never expect, a titanium mining facility on the outer rim of human-controlled space. Commander Michael Harris watched the initial assault unfold from the modified command center of the UES Defiance, now hidden deep within an asteroid field. The holographic displays showed something unprecedented, a coordinated attack that defied every known principle of military engagement. Kyle Thompson's modified mining equipment led the charge. The massive drilling platforms that had once extracted minerals from planetary crusts were now weapons of unprecedented complexity. Each drill had been transformed into a mobile fortress, equipped with Jason Lee's adaptive AI systems and Emily Rodriguez's quantum communication networks. The attack wasn't just a military operation. It was a complete reimagining of warfare. The Sarkon's initial sensor readings would have shown what appeared to be a chaotic, almost random movement of mining equipment. Traditional military analysis would have dismissed it as nothing more than desperate resistance. But each movement was a carefully calculated dance, choreographed by AI systems that could process potential scenarios faster than any known computational network. Mining lasers, originally designed to cut through solid rock, had been recalibrated into precision weapons. Drilling mechanisms became adaptive shield generators. Communication arrays transformed into electronic warfare platforms. Every piece of equipment was now a potential weapon. Every system a node in a living, breathing resistance network. Thompson's team had spent months preparing. They understood that their survival depended on turning limitations into advantages. Where traditional military forces would require years to develop new weapon systems, they had transformed industrial equipment into a fighting force in weeks. The first Sarkon response was typical of their computational approach, a mathematically perfect counterattack designed to neutralize what they perceived as a threat. Their massive dreadnoughts moved with machine-like precision, energy weapons charging to unleash devastating firepower. They were about to learn the true meaning of human unpredictability. Jason Lee's AI systems had been studying Sarkon battle protocols for months, not to counter them, but to deliberately subvert them. Each movement of the human force was designed to introduce controlled chaos into the alien tactical systems. Defensive positions that seemed suicidal would suddenly reveal hidden advantages. Apparent retreats were actually carefully orchestrated traps. Emily Rodriguez's communication network played a critical role. Quantum encrypted transmissions moved faster than light, allowing the human force to coordinate in ways the Sarkon couldn't comprehend. Information flowed like water, constantly shifting, constantly adapting. The battle wasn't just a military engagement. It was a performance, a deliberate demonstration of human creativity. Sarkon sensors would have shown impossible scenarios. Mining platforms moving in patterns that defied traditional tactical logic. Defensive positions that seemed to materialize and dematerialize. Communication networks that existed in quantum states between detection and non-detection. Commander Harris understood something fundamental. This wasn't just about winning a battle. It was about fundamentally challenging the X-Archon's understanding of warfare. The first wave of X-Archon dreadnoughts began to show signs of cognitive stress. Their perfectly calculated battle strategies began to develop inconsistencies. Strategic decisions became fractionally slower, less precise. They were encountering an intelligence that didn't just defy their computational models. It fundamentally challenged their understanding of military engagement. Dr. Amanda Collins's psychological warfare teams had prepared for this moment. Embedded within the attack were transmission sequences designed to introduce cognitive dissonance into the X-Archon's neural network. Mathematical sequences that were simultaneously tactical data and abstract art. Communication bursts that existed in a state between information and noise. As the battle progressed, something remarkable began to happen. The X-Archon's supposedly invincible defensive systems started to show vulnerabilities, not through direct technological superiority, but through something far more subtle, a fundamental inability to comprehend the human approach to conflict. This wasn't just a counterattack. It was a complete reinvention of warfare. In the command center of the UES Defiance, Commander Harris allowed himself the smallest smile. The X-Archon had come to destroy humanity, believing they could calculate every possible response. They had no idea what was coming. The transformation wasn't instantaneous. It was a crescendo of human potential, building from the seemingly impossible innovations of the past months. What that X-Archon had failed to understand was the fundamental nature of human collective intelligence. Where the alien coalition saw a defeated species, they were about to witness a complete reimagining of resistance. Each human colony had become a node in a living, breathing resistance network. The communication systems developed by Emily Rodriguez had evolved beyond simple information exchange. They were now a neural network that spanned multiple star systems, each colony contributing its unique insights, technological innovations, and strategic thinking. On New Frontier, Kyle Thompson's mining colony had become a crucible of technological innovation. The massive drilling platforms that had once extracted minerals now served as mobile defensive platforms, each one a testament to human adaptability. Thompson had transformed industrial equipment into a sophisticated military infrastructure, proving that survival was about reimagining limitations. Jason Lee's adaptive AI systems had spread across human-controlled territories like a quantum wildfire. Each system was subtly different, designed to learn and evolve independently. They were more than just computational tools. They were a distributed intelligence that could respond to threats in ways no centralized system could predict. The first signs of the full-scale uprising began with seemingly uncoordinated actions. A mining colony would suddenly repurpose its equipment into a defensive network. A communication relay would become an intelligence-gathering platform. Waste management systems would generate fuel and medical supplies. Dr. Amanda Collins's psychological warfare teams had laid the groundwork. That X-Archon's neural networks were already showing signs of systemic stress. The constant bombardment of quantum-encrypted transmissions, holographic misinformation, and deliberately chaotic communication strategies had introduced a fundamental uncertainty into their command structure. Commander Michael Harris understood that this wasn't a traditional military campaign. It was a total reimagining of human potential. The communication network developed by Rodriguez became the nervous system of the resistance. Information flowed like electricity, with each colony contributing its unique capabilities. A technical innovation discovered on one world would be instantaneously shared and adapted across multiple colonies. Defensive strategies would be collaboratively developed, with each human settlement adding its unique perspective. The X-Archon had always viewed warfare as a mathematical equation, a perfect computational problem to be solved. They were about to learn the true meaning of human creativity. The uprising didn't just challenge the X-Archon's military superiority. It challenged their entire understanding of intelligence and conflict. Colonies that had been considered defeated began to show signs of unexpected resilience. Abandoned research facilities became innovation centers. Communication arrays transformed into intelligence networks. Every piece of human technology became a potential weapon. Lee's AI systems began to show capabilities that defied traditional computational models. They didn't just process information. They reimagined it. Defensive strategies would emerge that seemed nonsensical at first glance, but revealed profound tactical advantages upon closer examination. The psychological warfare developed by Collins introduced a level of cognitive disruption that the XRCon had never encountered. Transmission sequences that were simultaneously tactical data and abstract art. Communication bursts that existed in a state between information and noise. Each human colony became a potential threat. Where the XRCon expected predictable resistance, they encountered a living, breathing network of innovation and adaptation. The turning point came not from a single battle, but from a fundamental transformation of human potential. Every settlement, every survivor became part of a collective resistance that defied traditional understanding of military engagement. Commander Harris watched the holographic displays, each one a testament to human resilience. Ships and platforms moved in patterns that would have seemed impossible mere months ago. Communication networks pulsed with quantum-encrypted transmissions. Adaptive AI systems generated strategies that challenged every known principle of warfare. The XRCon had come to eradicate humanity, believing they could calculate every possible response. They had no idea what was coming. In the command center of the UES Defiance, a new type of warfare was being born. Not a conflict of technological superiority, but a battle of imagination, creativity, and collective human potential. The uprising had begun. The final campaign was nothing like any military engagement in galactic history. Commander Michael Harris stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching as the collective human resistance prepared to strike at the heart of the XRCon Imperium. What had begun as scattered survivors was now a coordinated force that defied every known principle of warfare. The fleet was a testament to human adaptation. Mining platforms converted into mobile weapon systems. Communication arrays transformed into advanced electronic warfare platforms. Waste management systems generating fuel and medical supplies. Each vessel was a living, breathing example of human ingenuity. Jason Lee's adaptive AI systems had evolved beyond any computational model the XRCon could comprehend. They weren't just tactical algorithms. They were a distributed intelligence that could learn, unlearn, and reimagine strategic approaches in microseconds. Where the XRCon saw warfare as a mathematical equation, humans had turned it into an art form of controlled chaos. Emily Rodriguez's quantum communication network had become the nervous system of the resistance. Information flowed between human colonies faster than light, with each settlement contributing its unique insights and innovations. A defensive strategy developed on one world would be instantaneously shared, adapted, and reimagined across multiple star systems. Dr. Amanda Collins's psychological warfare teams had spent months introducing cognitive disruption into the XRCon's neural network. The alien command structure was already showing signs of systemic stress. Transmission sequences that existed between information and noise had fundamentally challenged their understanding of communication. The attack began with what appeared to be complete randomness. Human ships materialized in locations that should have been impossible. Communication bursts emerged from quantum states between detection and non-detection. Defensive positions seemed to materialize and dematerialize at will. The XRCon's initial response was typical of their computational approach, a mathematically perfect counterattack designed to neutralize what they perceived as a threat. Their massive dreadnoughts moved with machine-like precision, energy weapons charging to unleash devastating firepower. They were about to learn the true meaning of human unpredictability. Kyle Thompson's modified mining platforms led the initial assault. Massive drilling lasers, originally designed to cut through planetary crusts, had been recalibrated into precision weapons. Each platform was a mobile fortress, equipped with adaptive shield generators and quantum communication nodes. The battle defied every known principle of military engagement. Human ships moved in patterns that challenged computational analysis. Defensive positions that seemed suicidal would suddenly reveal hidden tactical advantages. Apparent retreats were carefully orchestrated traps. The Exarchon found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to follow any recognizable pattern of warfare. Lee's AI systems had been studying Exarchon battle protocols for months, not to counter them, but to deliberately subvert them. Each movement of the human force was designed to introduce controlled chaos into the alien tactical systems. As the battle progressed, the Exarchon's supposedly invincible defensive systems began to show vulnerabilities. Not through direct technological superiority, but through a fundamental inability to comprehend the human approach to conflict. The turning point came not from a single tactical decision, but from a complete reimagining of warfare. Human colonies that had been considered defeated began to show unexpected capabilities. Abandoned research facilities became innovation centers. Communication arrays transformed into intelligence networks. Every piece of human technology became a potential weapon. Commander Harris understood something fundamental. This wasn't just about winning a battle. It was about fundamentally challenging the Exarchon's understanding of intelligence and conflict. The final assault on the Exarchon home systems was a symphony of human potential. Adaptive AI systems generated strategies that seemed impossible. Quantum communication networks coordinated movements that defied traditional computational models. Psychological warfare teams introduced cognitive disruptions that paralyzed the alien command structure. In the command center of the UES Defiance, Harris watched as human forces systematically dismantled the most powerful military structure in the known galaxy. Not through brute force, but through a level of adaptive intelligence that the Exarchon could never have anticipated. The Exarchon had come to eradicate humanity, believing they could calculate every possible response. They had been wrong. As the final Exarchon defensive positions fell, a transmission burst across every communication channel, a message that would be remembered throughout galactic history. We are not finished. Humanity had not just survived. They had transformed.